Okay, we are so excited to be here today, and I have a very, very special guest. And this is a friend of mine, Dr. Kelly Bushéy, and she is not only the Associate Professor of Applied Psychology at Hodges University, but she has her Ph.D. in Psychology. So girls, we get something really special today. And she holds her Master's in Biblical Counseling and also her Bachelor of Science in Philosophy and Communication. Now, we met at Liberty University a few years ago, right?
A few.
And I had heard about a meeting for Concerned Women of America. So I went to this meeting, and it was in a small classroom. We weren't over 10 people in the classroom.
Not very many concerned women that day.
There weren't very many concerned women. Now, were you the president of the chapter?
I was the president of the chapter for the university.
She was the president of the chapter. So I walk in, and here she is, right? Short, small. And I'm thinking, what's she going to say? Well, my friends, you do not judge a book by its cover because she's small but potent and powerful. And she had us all convinced that we could change America. Well, fast forward 30 years, here we are. And I'll tell you, with age, that depth and that passion have only grown. And our desire is to be able to use our gifts and our passion to serve women. And so I know there's many things I admire about Kelly, but one of the biggest things that inspires me is when I look at her story. And she is a survivor, friends. You know, life happens to us. Life deals us a hand, a deck, and then we have to make it work. And sometimes it's really hard. And I know that Kelly's story is going to inspire you. So welcome, Dr. Kelly Bushéy. Dr. K.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
That's awesome. And you know, first I would just like you to be able to share a little bit about your story. Like, where did you come from? How was life right at the beginning when you started out?
Well, it started out in northern Michigan. So I was born at a young age in northeast Michigan, and I was born a twin.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
I was the third born in my family, and Tommy was my twin.
Right.
So the first part of my life I shared in the womb with my womb mate, Tommy. And then we were born into a very volatile home. So, in fact, my parents divorced when I was 3 years old because it just was like there was a lot of volatility and hostility within the home. And so my parents, they divorced. And so the first part of my childhood was, I would say until I was 8 years old, was really rough. I mean, it was rough. My mother had divorced my father, and then she remarried, and they were both alcoholics. So my biological father was an alcoholic, then my stepfather was an alcoholic, my mother was an alcoholic. So you get the vision, right?
Sure.
You get the idea.
And you know, there's some friends that are listening now that you've lived in the same context, right? With having alcoholic parents, and that's rough, right? And so Kelly gets you.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get what that's like. In fact, there's a whole, well, I wouldn't say a movement, but adult children of alcoholics.
Right.
Because there's certain symptoms within your life that you respond and react in a certain way. And so, there's certain, for example, one is that there's thermometers and there's thermostats.
Right.
Some people set the temperature and other people read it.
Right.
So adult children of alcoholics are really good at reading the temperature, because when they come home from school, it's like, you've heard, if mommy ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So you walk in and you're like, okay, is mom okay? Is dad okay? and how should I respond? So you get really good at that. And so with some of those like childhood traumas and pain, yes, it was horrible. You can have weaknesses from it, but you can also have strengths because it helped build my intuition and other types of gifts. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and so you're thinking about history, but how do you feel like, okay, you grew up in that context, okay, and share with me, like, because, okay, we know you're a doctor today, right?
Yes.
But it's been a long journey.
Yes.
So share a little bit how that was, like what you went through, okay, as a young child, that's great, or not so great, but then what did you have to get past to be able to be today where you're at?
Okay. Well, one is I had to get past a speech impediment. So there's actually a theory called handedness theory. More left-handed people, such as myself, have speech impairment.
Right.
They don't know why, but statistically, left-handed people have stuttered and impediments.
Right.
Well, I couldn't say my L's, and my name is Kelly Lynn. So I actually still to this day have a nickname called Ketty, because people say, hey, what's your name? And I think they just asked because they wanted to hear me in my little raspy voice, say, Ketty in, And so I obviously went to Head Start, and then after that, like kindergarten, and I had a speech therapist. So I'm grateful for that, because I don't know that I would be in an occupation. Anybody that met me when I was that old, and even through high school, and maybe even college, would have never guessed that I would become an educator and a communicator for a living. I mean, I could barely say my name.
Right. Another thing that really stood out to me about your story is that you sort of like put yourself through finishing high school and college, right?
Right, because when I was first of all, I would like to share, I said it was volatile till I was 8, so that I don't have to press rewind on this. When I was 8 years old, because of our alcoholic parents, they were sleeping it off on Sunday morning, and we had a babysitter named Carrie Dietz, and Carrie invited us to go to church. So then we went, and they were having actually like a competition. Whoever could bring the most guests would get a Bible.
Right.
So Carrie brought, there's 4 or 5 of us at the time.
Yeah.
And she won the Bible. And then I heard at this church these words, Jesus loves you. Now, I never heard the words love in a context, and that's why I want to mention that. I never ever heard the words love. And so I said, Jesus loves you. And I'm like, somebody loves me? I just had never heard of that. So I had grown up in a loveless home. Some people have loveless marriages. I never knew that concept. And so at 8 years of age, that's when my life really changed. And I know that. And so when we look forward and say, okay, all this education and all this, these experiences, that was the day that I met my best friend. And who, without him, honestly, I would not have made, honestly, Sherry, you met me when I was 18. When I was 16 years old, my twin brother was hit by a car and killed. So, and I met you when I was 18 or 19. So it was just still fresh. My parents divorced when I was 14. It was just like, I was just this hyperactive, wounded child, really, and remained that way for many years until I was able to.
Right. Well, and sometimes, you're so young, right? It's like you're just surviving, right? And maybe life has dealt a hard hand to you, and right now you're just like coping to survive. When Kelly and I met, she's great. She's like on fire, energetic, but there comes a point in time where you have to start processing, right, and healing, because once you're healed, then that's when you really can help other people.
Right? Yes. And I heard somebody say, and I'm not sure who it was, but they said you have to feel to heal. And so, Sherry, you know me from Liberty, and I just wasn't into that feeling thing. And I don't know if you feel this way in your life, people that are watching. It's just like, if I open this door up, I'm not sure I'm going to know how to shut it.
Right.
And some people, they won't cry because they're afraid they won't be able to stop. And I didn't want to feel. So I used humor, and I still do, but now I have more of a balance, used humor to get me through that. And that is a resiliency that I and that was a gift from God.
Right.
But also, just being able to use humor and then not being shy. I met a lot of wonderful people. And so back to you.
Okay. Well, yeah, we're talking about the struggles. What would you say would be sort of a turning point, like a victory where you think, now I'm not just looking back, but I'm moving forward?
Wow, it's kind of been like this. Not
Well,
gonna
what
lie.
life is that?
I'm not gonna lie. It's been up and down. It's been a journey that I've stayed on, but occasionally I would detour. And so I just want to say that I sit here as an imperfect person that's loved by a perfect God. And the ups and the downs were mostly through the deaths.
Right.
I just, I was, I think, 11 years old. I found my grandfather dead. And then, maybe I'm not supposed to say dead, but I found him when he wasn't living.
Right. Yes.
And that's a traumatic thing. And I was with my sister, and we had a big fish. And anybody that knows me, I love to fish. I gotta talk about fishing. But we we'd beat this big salmon that was swimming up the river to spawn, and we just grabbed a piece of wood and started beating it. We were so happy. Anyway, that story. Take this tree branch, put it through its gills, and walk home with it flapping on our back. And we walked to my grandfather's home. And I don't even know if I ever told you this.
No.
So you've known me how many years? You didn't know this story. Because I don't share it, but I would like to be vulnerable and a little bit open. Feel to heal. I'm asking you to do that. I'm telling you that that's where it changed. And so that was my first. And then after that I was the last one with my twin brother before he passed. And then I was the last one that was with my mother. And she passed. So I ran from grieving. And so when I'm the most authentic is when I'm saying, okay, I'm going to stay with this feeling a little bit. And then I retreat. And then I'm just still learning that balance. And I probably will the rest of my life sharing. But I'll continue to have the victories and know that those valleys I'm gonna be there lesser and lesser and lesser.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that I admired about you is here we are at college, and to see you working so hard to be able to pay your bills and to keep on top of it. I mean, here she was, really taking care of her. One day you came in with a box and you were so excited. And it was a microwave that you were going to send to your mom for a Mother's Day gift.
Yes.
And that just really touched me so much because she was already putting forth such a great effort to get herself through college. And here she was thinking about her mom. And that was so important to her. And that was really challenged me, what am I doing for my mom and the people that I love? That was whoa, a point of reference and to think about myself. And not only that, another thing was when your mom wasn't well and you said, I have to go back and be with my mom. And to be able to put all her plans on hold and go back. Go back to me, also to a painful situation. Wasn't it painful?
Oh, it was really painful. So, just very brief.
I mean, not that we want to dwell on the pain,
No.
But she's a survivor.
This
is a celebration.
This is a celebration.
It's beyond a doctorate. It's the doctorate of life.
You can have more degrees in Fahrenheit and produce this. So, I mean, it really is. These other things, these experiences, Sherry, they've built into my life more than anything. So, when I was 8 years old, I accepted Jesus. Then, my parents both did. Mm-hmm. My stepfather and
your mom.
Dad and my mom. Yep. And then, I say I had a drug problem. Because I was drugged to church. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Anytime the doors were open, we were drugged to church. And so for about 6 or 8 years, I can't remember exactly how many, but I think it was 6. Because it was 14 when I came home from school. And there was my stepfather in a chair, this ugly orange polyester chair that she used to do her quiet time in. And he was crying. And he was alone. And the house was pretty empty. She took a lot. She took almost everything but a few pans, and she took 3 children, and she left 3 children. And I was one of those that was loved. And quite honestly, that was the first time that I was separated from my siblings and my twin. So that was very, very, wow, like who leaves the children? But for her story that she can't tell here, I just wanted, she walked away. It was just too much, and she left not only her faith, but her family. And so I stayed back. And so that was that sense of abandonment, Sherry, that I had then. And there's books on it and theories and concepts, but you're left.
Right.
You're separated from your kid, your twin, and my sister Melinda and Becky, and then it was just like really, really hard. But the beautiful thing, to close the loop and answer your question, was like what happened. I went back to my mother. So after I left Liberty, I went to Word of Life, and then I graduated there. And Don Locke asked me the day of graduation, would you consider being the program director? Well, I said, like, and a good Christian girl should, I said, well, I'm going to have to pray about it. So this is what I said. Because I look up at everybody and I'm like, yeah, well, I'll have to pray about it. Yes. That's exactly. I still remember where we were standing and everything. Uh-huh. And so then I worked at Word of Life. And for 5 years, Sherry, I had every need met. I mean, I had towels. You know, I had like a cabin. They gave me a place to live and a place to eat, and the people loved me. And it was wonderful. And then I had an opportunity to go to Argentina. I was learning Spanish. I had little Post-its on my lamp, whatever. How do you say lamp in Spanish?
Lámpara.
Yeah, well, that was on my lamp. I had Post. I was learning the language.
Okay, good.
And then I had this. It was this morning, and in a way that only God can speak. I say, He speaks to me in a Kelly way. He speaks to you in a Sherry way. He speaks to you in a Brenda way. Whatever your way is, your name. And it was like, hey, you know what? I don't want you to go to Argentina. And just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Right.
And he wanted me to go back to my mom, who was in this. She had left us, and she went into this alcoholism and et cetera, et cetera. You know, it just keeps going.
Right.
And I was like, no, Lord, don't send me back there. Don't send me. You know, I'm not like that. Here I am, send me. I'm like, no, I do not. I mean, talk about having to love the most unlovable and hard to love person. It
reminds me of the movie Imagine. If you have seen it, you'll know what we're talking about. If you haven't, I recommend it.
That's it.
Well,
that's exactly
he
like
went back to his father, and that's where he found himself. He found healing, and he was able to get that relationship restored. Yes. But anyway, continuing yours.
So that's what happened. I mean, she left us, and she left everything, and then this is where I was supposed to go. So I went back to Michigan, and I lived in a little efficiency apartment. Like everything, it was like the tiny houses of today. And lived there, didn't even have a job, and just moved back there, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to obey. I'm going to do this. This is what I'm supposed to do. And literally within, I would say 6 months, my mom was. I woke up one morning, and she was staying at my house, and she was in the chair reading. And she said, I hope you don't mind that I read your Bible. And I'm like this. I'm like, no, whatever Bible, every version you want, you just have it all, you know. So literally within 6 months. Now, not all of our miracles turn that fast, but it did for me. And
if God is calling you to do something, if God places something on your heart, the importance of just being sensitive to that, obeying, and maybe even if you don't see the result, just trusting. Hey, listen, if God places this on my heart to do, just be obedient and do it. Right. That's huge.
I mean, I went back and I loved her in the most
loved her back.
Unlovable state, and that's what God does for us. And you know, if you don't know Him personally and you're watching this, I don't know what your faith is. You could be, you know, whatever your faith is.
Right.
And it's like sometimes we don't understand God, and so I'll ask people just like, you know, He can handle it. Put your gloves on and just like tell Him, just like have that conversation with Him and say, God, I don't understand you. I don't even know if you exist. I don't even know if you're there. I don't know if only I can hear my voice. And I always ask them to pray out loud.
Right.
And pray is so like, I don't know how to pray. Just have a conversation.
Like us, yeah. Talk to him.
just have that conversation. And so I'm just so glad that I took that risk. I was so scared, Sherry. I mean, but he did that miracle. So I just want to close that loop and say, he restored my relationship with my mom, the most unlovable, angry, mean lady who everybody loved. Well, not everybody, but they could be so fun for everybody else, but not for us.
That's right.
She was the life of the party out there, but she came home to us if she came home, and she wasn't easy to love. Yeah. So God gave me the love for her, and then I had a restored relationship. But then my struggle came when he took her. I felt, you took her. Like, are you kidding me?
Right when things were getting good.
Yes.
It had to end.
Are you kidding me? And then to be alone with her and scared, and it was just so painful, Sherry. And so maybe you're going through the loss of a loved one, or they're ill, and you're scared. I just want to encourage you that you really aren't alone, and that it took me, and that's where I really dipped, and I walked away from God. And I walked away from other people. I didn't talk to you for a long time. Right?
Right.
Like, I don't know how many years. But I just didn't believe he was good anymore. I always thought I was his favorite, I really thought, I'm favorite. I know he's not supposed to have favorites. Everybody says that, but I am. And then when I stopped believing that, because I thought, you don't know me. Because if you knew me, you would know that I'm scared. And you wouldn't leave me alone to watch this. My mother, not to be too graphic, but choking on her blood, and then she actually passed away right there. I went to get help, I come back, and she was gone. She was into eternity, her steel blue eyes, looking up. It took me years to realize that was actually a gift. Right? It was actually a gift that I got to be with her. And so, now, for even, 5 minutes, I'd give you the keys to my Jeep and my house or whatever I have, just for 5 minutes with her. And I had a lot of time with my mother.
And the thing is you say, I thought I was God's favorite. And you know what? I really believe you are.
Yes, I am.
You are. And the problem is when we try to just with a single evaluate God's nature, right? And say, because of this pain, and the world is pain. And that's even why we do these programs, is to help us get through it together, because life isn't easy. And so how do we navigate? How do we get through this? And we really need to get through it together, because we will pinpoint these certain circumstances and then say, well, just this is everything God is because of this. And we don't ever get the full picture, right? Everything is just so much larger than our story and our life. And so a lot of times just judged on what's happening to us, whether it's a sickness or someone that's left us or someone that's betrayed us, we lose that. So, I want you to share briefly before we finish up a little bit about like your work, your job, what brings you gratification as a professor, and go ahead, drink some water.
Oh, yeah.
And there you go.
A word from our sponsor.
Yeah, Aquafina. I'm going to have some too.
So, regarding where I'm at presently with my career and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am a professor, and I teach psychology courses, and they're really fun courses. I get to teach psychological statistics. I'm sure that's fun for you. Experimental research, forensic psych, human growth and development. I told you this morning, not so fun to teach. I don't know why. You have to talk. Maybe it's through the lifespan, when life starts and when it closes. Closing that book. I will have an adjunct faculty teach that one. And so I lecture for 3.5 to 4 hours at a time, and it's just great. This last class I had an age span between 21 and 60.
Wow.
I had somebody that was on a school board, somebody who worked for the governor, somebody who worked at Starbucks. I mean, we had so much fun. And a lot of people think, psychology, you're just trying to figure yourselves out. Well, I want to tell you, I did not get into psychology because I was trying to figure myself out. I didn't.
Why did you get into psychology?
I got into psychology I went to get my bachelor's at Liberty in communications, because I wanted to be an author and a speaker.
Right.
And I thought, well, I'll get that degree. And then I started speaking and communicating after I left Word of Life. I had some, I did some speaking engagements, and I noticed there was a line of people, and they would show up, and they'd say, my daughter's an anorexic, I'm depressed, whatever the stories are. And I thought, I need more than 3 points in a poem for these people.
Right.
I just can't just do that. I can't just be up there and entertain them. Right. I wanted it to have good content. Just like when I lecture now. I throw in a few, illustrations, but I need to keep the content good.
Right.
And so then I went to get my master's at, it's now Summit University, Clark Summit, Pennsylvania. Right. And so I got my master's in counseling because I wanted to have more equipment. And then they started to ask me deeper questions. And then I was still like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I can do it. Right. And I started teaching. After I finished my master's, I taught communications, and then I started teaching psych. Right. And then you get in the field, and then they keep you.
Right.
And so in order to advance in higher academics, you need to have, a doctorate.
Right.
A terminal degree, so they call it. And I do feel terminal right now.
Terminated.
So it's like, what? So then I got my Ph.D. because I did want to make a difference. And then I studied Native American historical trauma and that theory, and I've been working with Ron Hutchcraft Ministries and Native Americans for 25 years. Yes. You know what? You want to study something that's
we have to invite you back to talk about that. Yes.
But the Ph.D. was it just helped me advance. In academics, you have to do up or out. And I also wanted to say, finally, psychology is a study of the soul. So who better than believers to know psychology? It's not something to be afraid of.
That's excellent. So taking everything that we have talked about, do you have any final words for the women out there who maybe have had difficult things in their past, they're living difficult things now? Do you have any final words for them to help them through this stage? A ray of hope out there.
Wow. Yeah, I do. I have some encouragement to you. What I want to say is you have to feel to heal. If you want intimacy, it's into me you see. And so sometimes we struggle with intimacy and getting close to people because we're like, I don't know if I understand what's in here or trust it, let alone trust you with it. And so in order to really have deeper relationships, which I want more intimate, deep relationships in my life, you have to take that risk. And just know that it's a process. And we're all in process. And just keep showing up. And just, if you ever have thought of taking your life, please don't do that. Please know that I understand the despair, very similar to Elisha, when after a huge victory, though I've never been suicidal, I have wanted to give up. And I have given up. And I just set my passions aside. It's like, no, it's too risky. And I don't trust other people. Well, we have to. Just because somebody has hurt you doesn't mean that you can't trust somebody else. There's a thing called learned helplessness, where people try, and they try again, and then they give up. That's how they train elephants. They take them when they're little babies, and they tie them, and then they try to get away, and they can't, and then they try again. After 2 times or 3 times. And now they're huge, and they're powerful and mighty, and they still see themselves as that little elephant. That's just caged. So I just think that I understand fear, and I understand the fear of intimacy, fear of being hurt, fear of trusting people, fear of making a mistake. I just say, for every 3 friends you make, you might get, maybe you make 30 friends, and you get to keep that one. And then I still remember our very first deep conversation when we walked around, you're trying to pump me for trust. I'm like, goodness, I kept that mask on, and I didn't want anybody to see it for so long. And then I would hide behind humor, and I hide behind other things. And finally it's okay. And I'm kind of building some habit strength up. I'll trust it. It's scary. I'll try. But for every, one person that hurts you, I just got to still push through that, because some women can isolate. Right. They get hurt. They don't risk. They're and then they stay in their own little cocoon. And we were born for relationships. Even the Trinity is a relationship. And Jesus, when he walked the earth, he had 12, 11 really. But and can I just add this?
Yes, sure.
this is something that I was thinking of. And since we're talking about struggles in our life and just like the fear of pain, I think about the disciples, Sherry, when they were at Gethsemane. Mm-hmm. And he said, stay here, watch, and wait with me. And he went and prayed to the point of drops of blood, right? So what did the disciples do? They maybe prayed, but they fell asleep. Right. He comes back, and this is what, he says, what could you not watch with me? 1 hour. But the verse before that, and I think it's in Mark, but whatever gospel it is, it says, and he came and he found them sleeping from sorrow. He found them sleeping from sorrow. They were afraid. And some people sleep too much because they're in sorrow or they're escaping. There's different things. Some people need to sleep. This, I'm just saying, you have to sleep. It will help counteract depression. Within 3 days of not sleeping, it can trigger a disorder. You start feeling it the next day, right? Right. With your temperament. You could be a Pooh Bear or a Tigger, and next day you're an Eeyore. That's just not sleeping. So some people, they may think, psychologist, you're going to prescribe meds. No. First thing that you really need to do is you need to make sure that you're sleeping. Mm-hmm. And because you'll build up, your body will build up that serotonin naturally. Mm-hmm. And we have to sleep. And so these all things kind of are like this and not fully connected, but right. They really are. Sure. Because anybody that's watching this, I just want to tell you that I certainly understand sorrow. But he said, I say I want to be like God, I want to be godly, and maybe you do too. But he was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. That's right. We're like very selective in what we want. Oh yeah, but I don't want that. I want to be like you. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's right. That's right. But the beautiful thing is when you come through the sorrow, even though you can have tears and you have pain, there's this radiant joy and glory over your life when you come through the trial and you know that he's been with you. And so it does hurt and it isn't nice and we don't enjoy the process, but when we come through refined and it's like, boom.
Right? We are gold.
Yo. Well, I am so excited. I'm so excited. Thank you, Kelly. And I just want to talk to all the little elephants out there. Yes. Okay? I love that illustration. If you're being tied down, you need to wake up and say, hey, maybe I'm just limiting myself. Maybe I've been tied in. Maybe I'm thinking I can't do these things, but I can. There is a world of possibilities out there. And we are here to help you. We love you. Your life is important, and we don't want you to be tied up. We want you to become everything you can become because life is short, and you need to give your treasure back to this world. They're waiting on you. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have any questions for Kelly, also, you can find this on YouTube. So we love you guys.
What? This is going on YouTube?
Just kidding. Just kidding. Have a great day, and please write us and let us hear your comments. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome.